big day. Ainsley's book is out, and it's even possibly a bigger day for Laura Ingraham. This might be the time that Laura Ingraham, don't say anything, is named press secretary to the future president.
You never know.
You never know. All right. Hi, Laura Ingraham.
How you doing?
We're great. How are you doing? And have you heard from Donald Trump? Are you going to get this job? And would you take it if he offered it?
Things are in flux. We'll see. It's wonderful to be considered. I've known Donald for a long time. And, I know most of the guys who are going to be in the White House with him. Steve Bannon is a good friend, an old friend. We both have competing kind of media companies. Not really competing, but we're in the same world. So I've known Steve for a long time. Kellyanne I've known for, 15, 20 years, something like that. So they're old friends. Dave Bossie's an old friend. So it's kind of old school week for me. So all of them I have enormous respect for. And, of course, President-elect Trump.
Some of the best public servants are the unexpected ones who weren't shooting for it from the beginning. You mentioned last night a desire for public service. What would it mean to you as you consider it?
Well, I think I've done a lot of different things in my life. The last time I was in government, I clerked for Justice Thomas on the Supreme Court. I clerked on the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals in Lower Manhattan. And before that, I worked in the Department of Transportation. I led speechwriting in the last couple of years of the Reagan administration, also at the White House in domestic policy, and for Bill Bennett at the Education Department. So I have some experience in the federal government, but that was a long time ago. It was when I was right out of college. I was a newbie. And I've been on the outside for a long time, and I love what I do. I love radio. Life's Debt is going gangbusters, so I love it. I love what I do every day. Right. So I feel like my mom and dad I wish they were here to kind of experience the things I've seen in the last few years because they're no longer with us. So I thought about them a lot. I'm praying a lot, and we'll see what happens. I'm not prepared to announce anything.
The thing that, would be a huge stretch if we didn't watch Tony Snow do the same thing. And when you saw how he thrived in that with the very similar background to yours, I think that's what a lot of people thought. That makes total sense.
Yeah, I speak for 3 hours a day on the radio. I have a phenomenal coast-to-coast audience. I think a lot of times radio talk show hosts, especially those who have a national play, it's almost like a daily focus group. And we tend to see things that are coming in the culture and in the country but ahead of some other folks who spend most of their time in the big cities and don't really mix it up with the folks all over the country. So I feel like over the last 15 years in radio, this is my 15th anniversary in radio, I've learned a lot about America, and I've learned more than when I was a kid in Connecticut or up in New Hampshire at college or down here in Washington. And I love the country more than I did when I started in radio because of her people. And if I could be of help in this administration and the role makes sense for me, then I'd definitely entertain that, and it'd be a great privilege to be asked.
Great. Well, it would make total sense. Let's talk about something else that didn't make much sense. I thought the president's been fantastic from the Rose Garden to the meeting to his hour and 15-minute presser yesterday. But I was surprised about the Wall Street Journal leaks that said this, and I'll just give you an excerpt. During their private meeting, a White House meeting on Thursday, Mr. Obama walked his successor through the duties of running the country, and Mr. Trump seemed surprised by the scope, said familiar people with the meeting. Trump aides were described by those people as unaware that the entire presidential staff working in the West Wing had to be replaced at the end of Obama's term. Does that sound credible?
No, it doesn't. I could see someone saying, and I have no personal knowledge of this, I could see someone saying, wow, that's a lot of staff.
Right.
Or all these people, someone who hasn't spent a lot of time in the White House, again, I know the White House pretty well. You walk around like, wow, all these people, that's a lot of people.
Right.
So all these people have to be replaced? But you would say it as just kind of a throwaway line. Right. I don't believe for one moment that Donald Trump thought that Obama's staff was going to stay behind.
Yeah, that's
right.
Well, come on. Hey, Valerie Jarrett, can you stay for 2 years until we get our feet underneath us?
And why is that a big story anyway? So he's surprised? All right, big deal.
Well, exactly. And Laura, there's a photo, I'm sure you've seen it, we're going to put it up on the screen real quick, of the Obama staff reacting to the results, arms folded, scowling. In public, Barack Obama has tried to be gracious. Have you heard anything about privately what's actually happening, whether you feel like there will be an earnest transfer to set Trump up for success?
I think the staff was obviously shocked. If you were told by the media, most in the media, that Hillary was a shoo-in, some of those staffers probably were intending to stay on. I know there are law firms in Washington, D.C. that were already expecting a good number of their partners to leave to go work for Hillary. They already hired their replacements and were at their firm. So now they have double the number of lawyers in some cases. So everyone was expecting this. They were counting their chickens before they hatched. And I understand they're very surprised. I get it. But I don't believe that, you know, they're going to steal the DJTs off the keyboards. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be really surprised. That's such peanut stuff. And as for the, you know, Trump being surprised about the number of people in the West Wing, this is when you're really desperate for anything negative to say about Trump. It's small potatoes, and I think we have big, important issues to solve in this country, and we got to move on to them.
You said you were good friends with Steve Bannon. You've known him for a long time. We had a panel of moms. One of the moms says he's a white supremacist. You've seen that in the mainstream media. Tell us about him, and is that true?
Front page of the New York Times today.
This is what I really hate most about Washington, is this type of smear campaign that I saw going back to, you know, Justice Thomas. I mean, when they see someone as an ideological threat or someone who could be very, very powerful, advancing a conservative message, close to a principal or actually in a principal position, there are the piranhas that will circle around. They hope to get a little blood in the water, and then they hope for the big, the big fish to come in and kill them off. Steve Bannon is a wonderful person. He's someone who, if you're not feeling well, he'll pick up the phone and say, how you doing? How are your kids? What's going on? And he's also happens to be really smart. I mean, that merry band of small, the small band of merry warriors over there at the Trump campaign, they pulled off the upset of the century. And there's a lot of sour grapes in Washington, D.C. There are a lot of envious people. I get that, but do not besmirch someone who is a patriot. He's a good man, he's smart, and he's dedicated to improving this country, which, frankly, a lot of those people maligning him, they should have spent a lot more time focusing on that themselves.
Well, Laura, that's right. I mean, a lot of people know you. They see you on television. They hear from you. Steve Bannon hasn't had as much of a public role. He also served in the Navy for 10 years, serving his country at high levels. What do you anticipate his, senior counselor, what will that look like? What do you think he will do to sort of craft what a Trump presidency looks like?
Well, I think, as we saw in the campaign, I would be very surprised if his role weren't the chief strategist for advancing the Trump agenda, both in domestic policy, economic policy, immigration policy, trade policy. Steve and Steve Miller, both, and Kellyanne, Dave Bossie as well, they're all steeped in this. They know these issues, and it's going to take some deft strategizing and really good messaging to advance this in a city that is still an establishment city. It's still filled with lobbyists. It's still filled with lawyers. It's still filled with the same special interests that existed before Trump was elected president. It's going to take a smart hand and someone who's also courageous, thinks outside the box, to use that terrible cliche, who's a little unconventional sometimes. I mean, remember people were really criticizing Trump when he went to Detroit. Oh, how dare you do these speeches about helping African Americans? That's patronizing. Well, that was really smart that he did that, and I hope he continues to do things like that.
Yeah, and actually do things. And lastly, it's impossible to not miss the protest and the 18 to 23-year-olds who want to go walk up and down the street and walk out of their high schools. If you're Donald Trump, whatever your opinion is, what is the best way for him to address this? And is it incumbent on Hillary and Barack Obama to do more?
Well, considering Barack Obama and his Justice Department, they thought it was fine to weigh in every time there was a protest in the inner city about a shooting of an unarmed black man. It would be nice if, at the same time, they actually chimed in on this and said, look, let's everybody go home and give this administration a chance to make the country better. You might not agree with them. We get that. We can debate it. But as far as blocking streets, disrupting traffic, disrupting learning in schools, none of that's going to help anyone. So I hope we take the same attitude that we took in some of the other more controversial circumstances.
The teachers and professors are greenlighting this and pushing them forward. That's the outrageous part of it.
Absolutely. They're being penalized for having students that support Trump are also being penalized across the country.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. Good.
Thanks, guys.